So my ADHD ass completely forgot to record this video. I thought about recording this like 5 months ago, but I forgot and fuck it. So Vancouver organizing is so fucking messy because of NGOs and anarchism. These are the two biggest pitfalls of organizing within Vancouver. And of course, both of these are very heavily tied to liberalism. And I go through this really extensively in my 14,000 word piece on the dialectics of the Western left. And before skipping onwards, I just want to say that like anarchism, I don't undialectically shit on it or just say that it's garbage or say that it's nonsense. I don't reduce it to that. Anarchism is a very broad space for a lot of people to find support that they've never had before, especially among people who look like them and are able to keep them safe and afford them comfort that they've never known. So anarchism is a very broad space for these people to find acceptance. However, when it comes to organizing, anarchism is where energy goes to die, because it's super individualist. It's super individualist and they reject democratic centralism. So democratic centralism is a democratic way to build an organization, because without it, what you end up with is a very small group of people that are unable to grow the organization because they need to vote on everything. And this is one of the biggest weaknesses within anarchism in the first place. This obsession with horizontalism. It is built on propaganda, saying that all people are innately evil or any degree of power will corrupt somebody. This is flagrantly untrue. The bulk of people aren't corruptible. The bulk of people have no fucking interest in leadership. There is always leadership. Wherever there is, there's some degree of leadership, and most people who just prefer to follow the leadership. So there's not a horrible need to focus so much on corruption when it comes to organizations, unless there's like huge amounts of funding. And that's its own whole can of worms. But democratic centralism, you have an organization, you grow it, and then you have smaller bodies, committees, who will focus on a particular task. They will focus on tenant organizing, or they will focus on union work, or they will focus on whatever project is going on. And then they will report back to the org with their progress. So say, for example, the org, they've reached 20 members and they can't all focus on the same task. They can't focus on every different task, and people have different specializations. So let's say 8 of them are interested in tenant organizing and the 8 of them go on to do that. These people don't need to get the authority of the rest of the organization for every single task. They have the trust of their organization to carry out their tasks. And when they're unsatisfied, most of the time they'll just step down from that role and say, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I'll go back to the org and see what else I can do and see where else my talents are useful. So this is what allows orgs to grow, and this is what allows them to organize really fast. So the big struggle with anarchism is firstly the lack of democratic socialism or democratic centralism. And the second is not being an org. When they aren't an organization, they are not directly accountable, so they kind of fill a political space. It's vacuous and intangible, like smoke. You can't grab it and you can't measure it very well, but it fills the space. And what this allows for is even a single person able to manipulate a body of people and prevent others from coming into that space. So let's say, for example, there was a signal group and one or two people were admins and they maintained the status quo, the hegemony. That was the space for people to go to when they were interested in that topic. And one or two people were able to administrate that space and have the ultimate say over that space instead of that space being for everybody. That would be a very dangerous combination. And that is the foundation of a lot of organizing in Vancouver. With anarchists, with Palestine, and with many things, this is exactly how things are in Vancouver. But, of course, there is a lot more organizing that goes on. There's actual organizations who are doing shit, but that is a big part of the foundation of Palestine solidarity organizing in Vancouver. And this is another weakness of anarchist stuff and this obsession with security culture, this obsession with signal, this obsession with individual steps to feeling like an organizer or feeling as if your personal steps are subverting the state. And when anarchists or a group of people, they're able to take up a space, let's say VTU, for example. Much of VTU is liberals, much of it is anarchists, there's some Marxists, there's some genuinely awesome people. But if the bulk is not great and they commodify a space and they take up a space, then they're preventing others from being able to come into that space. And preventing others from coming into that space is doing a disservice to the masses. And it is prioritizing their own desire to feel like organizers or be doing the work and just really stroking their own ego and bragging to people about being an organizer. So this is the weakness of not using democratic centralism. And when people fill and commodify the space and monopolize this space, it shuts out other organizations. Anak Bayan, for example, is an awesome Filipino org who does great mass work and does tenant organizing. So shout out to Anak Bayan and shout out to the people who don't have anarchism as their identity and who just use it as a stepping stone or a stage of progress to know that that's not where they want to be, that's where they are currently, but they're open to learning and developing forwards. Because anarchism is one of the biggest things that destroys revolutionary potential and converts it to liberalism. Also, really quickly, another big struggle with anarchism is that it makes a very dangerous combination because it allows a lot of white saviors to go and focus on community and on helping people, directly giving them material aid, directly giving them money, which gratiates their white guilt. And it's not a one-way thing. It's a two-way thing because marginalized peoples directly need support all the fucking time. So with that, we have a feedback loop of white saviors who were directly filling their need to provide support to marginalized peoples. Then we have marginalized peoples directly getting support. So what we have is this process of revolutionary potential going nowhere. So it's this very, very, very dangerous combination for white guilt to palliatively support, not proactively support in making systemic change, but palliatively making support at the individual level, which is the most costly way to provide support. So ultimately, one final note to mention, please check out my 14,000 word piece on the subject. The last thing is that, like, what anarchism and liberalism and these spaces allow and produce is cliques. And when you have a clique, you have a little group who is not going to grow. They're going to be comfortable in the way things are. They're going to protect things as they are. They're going to protect new people coming in. They're going to protect change. They're going to maintain their positions in leadership, and they're going to gatekeep. So it ends up being a small group of friends who are committed to themselves, they're committed to each other, they're committed to feeling as if they're this big revolutionary change, but they're not committed to revolutionary change because disconnected from the revolutionary theory and being disconnected from the masses is a huge mistake.